The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this episode of the ForceCenter podcast feed is one of our deep dives. We're going to be diving deep into the connections between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Are they a dyad? Maybe even a triad with The Force Awakens? We're going to discuss that very much in this episode. My name is Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. This will be a fun episode to really get into some things and maybe even pull back some curtains on doubts and thoughts and questions we have, but where we ultimately land on these movies. No hot takes here, just long sips on deep ruminations.
Let's sip the deep ruminations, which sounds like a really great, maybe kind of a dark craft beer.
It does. Yeah. Available at local gastropubs here.
Yes. Before we get into it, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible, get a free audiobook download. There's a little Jerry Lewis moment there for me, so I'll start again. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week we are recommending Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, the first book in the new High Republic storytelling. The second book, the adult book, is coming out soon. So if you haven't started in the High Republic, why don't you give a listen to Light of the Jedi so you're all caught up? To download your free audiobook today, you can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for that free audiobook. And Ken, do you have another offer?
Oh, let me look around. I do have another offer. We're happy to offer it. Inside Editions, publisher of a ton of great Star Wars books, is offering 35% off across their website with a special ForceCenter code. To get your discount, enter the coupon code FC35 or visit the website with this link, insideeditions.com/discount/FC35. FC35. This week, we're recommending the Inside Editions book, Secrets of the Jedi. Get it to learn about the Jedi and get ready for the Secrets of the Sith book coming out from Inside Editions shortly. Check it all out with the code FC35. Joseph, back to you, sir.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some Secrets of the Jedi, or our secret opinions, are now no longer secret opinions about some of these movies about Jedi. Ken, I don't want to shock you, but I think that there's some strong feelings about the sequel trilogy. Very, very strong feelings. Good, bad, otherwise, in between, confusion. Joy, love.
Yeah.
I
was going to say indifferent, but I don't find a lot of indifference.
Nope. No, that would be a fun conversation to have. Like, I don't remember him. But we wanted to have this conversation because a lot of time the strong feelings around the sequel trilogy do seem to hinge on how well The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker connect. Now, of course, in this conversation, The Force Awakens is going to matter a lot because that's where a lot of the ideas are absolutely set up. But we want to focus on really this discussion of, do The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker connect, or is there a lot more friction? And we've discussed this, Ken, because recently this kind of blossomed again of the question of was there a plan or not? And, kind of working through, well, if there was or wasn't a plan is a great discussion. But ultimately, where that leads us is, what do you think of ended up on screen? And does it matter what went on behind the scenes in terms of plan or no plan if you're happy with what went on screen in the actual story? And I think a lot of the discussions between fans about The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, they end up being about the behind the scenes stuff a lot. Those questions or those discussions always involve mentioning interviews or rumors or theories about the creator's intents. It is often a discussion of the creative process, which is valid and interesting. But for this episode, what I really wanted to do is take a look just at the stories themselves and discuss them as though we just discovered them buried in a tomb and we know nothing about who made them. And we're just watching the story. And when we just watch the story without interviews or rumors to cloud our judgment, where do we perceive friction between the movies and where do we perceive harmony?
Yeah. Yeah, well said up top. There you go. That's the episode, folks. Now, this is obviously a topic that has a lot of passion attached to it. A lot of things come up. We Joseph and I here will always and Jennifer obviously when she's on the discussions here, we always try to come not just from a positive light, but consider all sides and be measured. And sometimes I can have little moments of grumpiness when it takes over, and I just kind of sometimes the discourse tires me out. I don't want to speak for you, but Joseph, I know sometimes my battles as well. So, am I saying anything out of turn there? No.
No. I love having the discussions, but I think because people feel so passionately about these movies, the discussions are often there's a lot of energy and anger, and this is the way it is, and that is the way it is, and in that part of the discourse, not people having different opinions, but people expressing them with anger. It gets really hard for me and weighs me down.
Yeah, it weighs me down too, and I just don't think a lot of it is fair to the story, and you can judge it on itself, and that's no shock for anyone who's listened to ForceCenter for a while. But I part of this discussion, and I'll say up front, I'm entering this particular episode of ForceCenter with a just kind of not going off the cuff and off my mind here, but just going off my heart and my reactions to these films and what I feel about these films. And how they relate to Star Wars story, but also it brings up things. Listening to you set the table here, Joseph. I'm going back to might be literally a week after Rise of Skywalker's out and about, and I'd maybe seen it twice by this point. And I was at a one of the last big social events I was at before 2019 turned to 2020 and things changed. And a couple of friends of mine, one I used to work with in the digital world, one I'd been around, was a writer, I didn't really know as much. And they said, "Oh, have you seen Rise of Skywalker?" I said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." And one of my friends, the one I'd worked with, goes, "I got to ask you because you're a Star Wars guy. Like, did you like it?" And I go, "Oh, I love Rise of Skywalker." Again, this is all I said. And he goes, the next thing out of his mouth, Joseph, he goes, "But did you feel it connected to the Last Jedi?" And I said, "Yeah, in general, yeah, I absolutely think it did." And then the guy next to him, again, I'm not super close to them, so I don't definitely want to say his name, but he just goes. It clearly was a middle finger to Rian Johnson. And I ended the conversation. I walked away from both of them. Literally was like, good, I'm going to the bar.
Like a total sitcom moment. You just literally turned without saying anything.
Done. And the reason that makes me grumpy is things in Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi might not work for you in terms of connection. And those are what we're here to discuss. But so often it gets boiled down to what you think you know or what you think the reason is. Again, if you love these movies, you're not going to question anything about a plan or anything about this and that. Who directed it, who wrote it, who was fired, and all these kind of things. Phantom scripts leaked by directors to websites. None of that's going to matter to you if you like it, right? And I think that's generally where I come down on. But if you don't like it, instead of researching why you don't like it or really discovering for yourself why you don't like it and being okay with that, because that's valid, you then jump to what you saw, whether you wanted to click on a clickbait title or not. What is just the water cooler conversation? Oh, that didn't work because X, Y, and Z, and it's a middle figure to that guy, and they hate each other because I heard some this and that story. And so we're trying to go beyond that today, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph, we start there to acknowledge it, but then move past that.
Exactly. And I think what we always try to say on ForceCenter in Mean is we welcome other opinions, of course, especially if they're expressed, without anger or vitriol. And I'm always fine with anybody who's like, I don't like any of the sequel trilogy movies, or I like this one, but I don't like that one. Your personal taste, your personal reaction. I believe art is subjective. I believe that's one of the things that makes it beautiful. So while I'm a big fan of the sequel trilogy, and as we go through this podcast, it will be obvious that I think it mostly all works, totally open to people who don't think it works. I think what bothers me sometimes is, for me, it's one thing to say, hey, I see how The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker were trying to connect, but the way they did those connections just doesn't work for me. I don't like it. Or, hey, when The Last Jedi ended, it seemed like the next movie might just be about Kylo being the leader. And I really preferred that idea. So it's hard for me to like Rise of Skywalker. Like, opinions like that, I don't mind. What I struggle with is when people say there are no connections, period.
Yeah.
That's what I really strongly disagree with, because I think there are many connections. And then if you don't like those connections, great, that's subjective, that's your choice. But the thing that makes me grumpy and makes me want to go live on an island and drink thalassiren milk and get it in my beard is that idea that there just aren't connections.
Yeah, and I don't like specifically Star Wars movies. Just they should have done this type of train of thought, because often the things that are suggested, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. They didn't do that though, and they did this. So what do you think about this? That's there. And look, art is subjective. I just lived an example. I had never seen the movie Inception until last week. Grace and her family in town, we put on Inception at home at the home theater and had some popcorn, and I didn't like it. I was like, yeah, I get you. Not for me. Didn't connect. I like Nolan stuff, so that's not an issue. I even like Leo DiCaprio. I'm here for that. I get, I didn't like it. And, I may or may not have been kicked out of the house for 4 days, which I understand. Like, it was a thing. Art is subjective. And I wasn't like, Nolan didn't have a plan. It didn't work for me. So we're here for that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. And if you come from the perspective of why you care about it, not that it didn't have enough of an overall plan, and because of that, you feel like that is the reason that you don't like the film, that is totally understandable. But what we want to do today, again, is just dive into the stories, forget what percentage was planned, what percentage was made up as they went, and just dig into what's there in the films, and is there friction? Is there harmony? So with that in mind, I think we've already made it clear that, you and I are both fans of both of these films, which is also, I think a part of this journey of there was such backlash against Last Jedi, and you and I were both like, we love Last Jedi, here's why. And then Rise of Skywalker came out, and then a lot of people were like, but Last Jedi is good and this one's bad. We're like, but we like this one too. It's a hard place to be sometimes. But obviously, we're both fans of both of those films. What is your overall reaction? The films work together for you in the big picture, right? And did they right away? Did something change over time? Take me through your journey of, do they work together?
They work together in the sense that I think let me even go back to the beginning. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but this is but this is, like I said, I'm going a little off the cuff, a little from the heart. The term emotional canon that we use around here a lot, and it's something that I think I may have stumbled on. I had that point when my viewing of Star Wars and how I took in Star Wars in 2015, 2016 into 2017 changed, and this includes the books and New Dawn and Rebel and everything, Rebels, and where I was convinced Zare Leonis was Finn, right? Like, or a family member, and it's all connected. And that staff is this person's staff, which, by the way, are all fun things. And by the way, look at the figure. Plagueis' staff definitely seemed like it could have been there. But when stuff like that didn't start appearing, and I was a little like, suddenly the themes, and when you came over to my house one day, you mentioned it when we were looking back on the origins of ForceCenter. We're like, let's dive into the themes, and even the basic themes of Force Awakens started to change how I took it in. That's where that term kind of comes from, the emotional canon. These are all connected. So Rise of Skywalker, absolutely, I never questioned it. There's things along the way that I was like, oh, they did that. Oh, I did that. And I think I'm going to come back to that a lot. I always talk about the execution. On paper, the idea of Palpatine coming back in any way, shape, or form as a clone in any way, shape, or form, I was like, I don't know if I like that. But I like what it represented. I like the questions it made me ask. And so that's where I got to be honest, because I'll have some honest things about what didn't work at times, but that never was a problem for me. The changes, and there are some changes, I really loved the path they took me on. And that's just kind of where I landed on it.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense, and I love you using the term emotional canon, because I think that is where the films really connect with me. Of, I'm thinking about, well, where did we leave off with Rey? What was she feeling and wanting? What was true of that for every character? What does Palpatine coming back mean for the characters? And I think entering it from that emotional standpoint really brings you into the story and away from the interviews. And for me, that's where it all really, really works well, is all of the emotional connections, which we're going to talk about. The Palpatine coming back, the announcement, I was thrilled. Talked to a lot of people at Celebration right away after the announcement, where people were like, I'm kind of okay with him coming back, but I'm not sure about how they're going to do it. And I would give people these like theories about like, well, maybe it's going to be a Sith haunting and his soul will be trapped in an object. And the first act of the film will be, Rey and Kylo competing to get this because it's a power source. So like, maybe it'll be something like that. Think about it that way. The Sith haunting's a fun idea. And then, so I had a little bit of that, like, oh, maybe that'll be it. And then the dead speak and Palpatine's back and we're off to the races. So even as I sat down, I was like, hey, those expectations you have, throw them out into the aisle of the seat, the aisle of the theater. And I had to do that too and really engage with what was there. And it worked for me because of the emotional canon, the emotional connections. I think the other big thing for me in how The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker connect is I think a lot about the tonal differences. That I do think there are tonal differences, and that might be why some people just prefer the storytelling style of one film over the other. And I honestly, it's fascinating to me that it can be such a heated thing because I feel the tonal shift is similar to Empire Strikes Back in Return of the Jedi to me. Of the story continues, the characters left off at a certain place. They've had some amount of growth in between the films, and they're still heading in the same directions, wrestling with the same ideas. But there's a tone difference. I think, in particular, The Last Jedi it's just like Empire. It's the middle chapter. It is a little bit more pensive. It is storytelling in which characters are put into kind of a tense crucible situations so that their internal emotions can be literally expressed and wrestled with. It is a little bit more of a how do we make the internal external movie, and the adventure serial element of Star Wars, that ingredient, I think is dialed down a little bit in The Last Jedi. And that's not like The Last Jedi made a mistake. It's just you're making Star Wars and it has all these ingredients. And when you change up the ingredients, you're still cooking the same dish, but it tastes different. If you use if you use a drop of this spice in Last Jedi and then a pound of that spice in The Rise of Skywalker, it's going to taste different. And I think that's what happens is The Rise of Skywalker is much like Return of the Jedi. It is a little bit more direct. The characters still have conflicts. There's still moments of a raw emotion and moments of actual, of just absolute depth. But in general, it is more direct. It is more bombastic. It is racing to the big climax, the big finish line. And it is just much more of an adventure serial in terms of its pacing and its structure. So I think that's why for me, like I really go back to the emotional connections because there are tonal differences. But that's just the way the story is told, and I'm interested in the story itself.
Yeah, and now really, really trying to just discuss these points and what's there in the film, and I'm going to try not to be worried about what anyone else thinks out there right now. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I think there are tonal differences, 100% total differences, and at times I don't, it always works for me. But here's the big confession. If you're ranking films and that thing that we kind of sometimes have to do, or you feel you need to do even by yourself in a room alone, what are my favorite Star Wars films in order? It's kind of a fruitless pursuit. I always say Empire, Last Jedi, and then the list goes on. That still holds true for me. I'm going to say right now, I much rather enjoy watching Rise of Skywalker. I actually enjoyed, of the three sequel saga films, 7, 8, 9, I enjoyed the most right now. It's the one I put on. It's the one I have in the background. It's the one I sit down to get moved by. It's the one I cry to. And it's I always say it's like going to church for me. That does not knock Last Jedi down any ranking, but that speaks to the tonal shift. Empire is also up there. It's my number one. It's not the Star Wars film I put on all the time. Return of the Jedi is probably more that in that era. And I think we've made some of these, especially me, made clumsy comparisons to like rock music or music in general and an album. And you need that tonal shift. So I recognize that it's there, and it sometimes seems jarring to me. Like, I mean, other than just a different cinematographer shot it, and different, director was at the helm, that's going to happen. But you need for an album to work. The art of listening to an album is long dead in the music business because of digital music, and I don't have a problem with that. But it's a different conversation. You need the slow, meandering, introspective ballad that questions everything you know about yourself, and then at the end of the album, you get the pick me up rock song that takes you to the big end. You
Yep.
need it, and that one moves you just as much as the slow ballad in the beginning. But it's part of the experience. So I acknowledge there's a tonal shift. It is kind of different. 7 and 9 look more connected, feel more connected just because of who was behind the lens. But it is there. Can't deny it. But I celebrate that difference, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, and I think your album analogy is really, really great. I think even the prequel trilogy, I don't think there is much of a tonal shift because it's the same director and the entire same crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even that, in service of telling the story, Rise of Skywalker, excuse me, Revenge of the Sith puts its foot on the gas, right? Like,
Yeah.
we've had time to study and develop, and like, but Rise of Skywalker's like, we don't have any room for C-3PO wackiness. We don't even have room for all the battles. We gotta get through all of these huge,
Yeah.
climactic, titanic, duels of the fates. We got to get through them all. Let's go. So even in that one, is the third chapter is louder, bigger, more bombastic.
Yeah, Revenge indeed. Yeah, and yeah, there's a from episode 1 to episode 2, there's obviously a big jump in time and therefore a little bit of a tonal shift in just how the movie looks because the way they shot it, the way George was like, hey, all the screens now, blue, green, put them all up. Like, we get it. Yeah, I know it feels it's safe, but yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I don't know my whole overall point other than, man, I'll put on Rise of Skywalker, and next thing you know, it's 2 hours because it was like I'll watch a scene over lunch, and my whole day is watching that film.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a good thing to think about. I like to watch movies in different ways. If I want a rousing adventure with some moments of absolute depth, then I'm probably going to throw on Return of the Jedi or Rise of the Skywalker. But if I want to really slow down and ruminate and get deep into my feelings about the mythology of Star Wars and the emotions, like, I'm going to slow down with Empire Strikes Back or Last Jedi. And I think that's fine. And to me, that's why I'm not big on ranking them, because it's like, I'm never going to rank what's better, pizza or pie. I eat them at different times for different reasons.
Such a good example. And Solo's a chocolate bar that I'll grab every day I can.
Yeah, exactly. I will eat that Solo chocolate bar. All right. We could make metaphors about music and food forever, and we probably will. But for now, let's move on with our conversation about the friction and the harmony between Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. We're going to talk in the second half of the podcast about those real moments of harmony, how everything connects. But first, I want to wrestle with some of the most common concerns about friction, about how they don't match up, and see how we feel about them. You feel ready for that, Ken? Are you ready for friction?
I don't know if I ever am, but yes.
I didn't plan on asking you that or saying it that way, but sometimes things happen. Anyway, we're going to start with this. One of the common moments of discussion of potential not connecting as much is this romance between Finn and Rose is set up in The Last Jedi up to a point, and then the romance doesn't seem to be there in The Rise of Skywalker. Does that bother you? What are your thoughts on the Finn and Rose dynamic?
It's the most jarring of the things that don't connect. And I wasn't bothered by it initially because we had, you and I had read the Rebecca Roanhorse book, Resistance Reborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of dealt with in there. And I remember, I think even off air, you and I were like, well, that's interesting.
Well, yeah, because it was just sort of, it was, I think it's a quick passage of like, yeah, no, we talked about it. Nah.
Yeah. And you can make all your, your jokes about speed to speed too, of relationships begun of passion. Don't. Yeah. So it is jarring. In the end, it's okay. Now we both are in agreement a lot more, honestly. Rose Tico would have worked for us is something that we probably would have wanted. I personally, not speaking for Joseph, this now goes to behind the scenes conversation. I understand some of it. If we wanted her around Leia and it didn't work and this and that, I still think you have enough time to make something else work. I'm supportive of Kelly Marie Tran and more Rose Tico in Star Wars. But I was okay with her not being out on the main mission. I didn't necessarily feel that would have worked for me. But it was glaring. And here's the thing. When I say I didn't notice it the first couple of times, it was the third viewing. this is all within 1 week, right? Our first viewing, second viewing, third viewing, you and I and our friend Van William and others attended a screening of this, and there was a little after party. And someone mentioned it at the after party, a friend of ours, Jeff May, about the Rose thing was kind of weird, her not being with Finn. And that was the first time I was like, oh yeah, like, I guess, yeah. And no one else would have read that book. Okay, that doesn't necessarily work. So I don't know how to fix that. In end result, I'm okay with them not being together or them not being explored, but I can't help but think that's jarring.
Yeah, no, I think for me, the Rose's role in the Rise of Skywalker is definitely like my biggest criticism of Rise of Skywalker, and it always as much praise and love as that I have for that film. I always want to acknowledge that. I really feel like Rose should have featured more in the Rise of Skywalker, and or had a big hero moment. It's very, very kind of there in that she is the one who figures out that the weakness of the Sith Star Destroyers is the big Death Star tech gun. But I feel like that there were a lot of ways that that could have been really a triumphant hero moment. And I think either of those things, either or both, more screen time and or more significant screen time that followed up on this idea of who she is in The Last Jedi as somebody who is just an average citizen whose world was ravaged by the First Order and realized that they needed to be stopped and is committed to it. And finishing that journey a little bit more would have been absolutely great. The romance, I mean, it definitely is a point of friction that it isn't acknowledged in the movie. So there's a part of me that if I'm just watching the stories and not any of the behind the scenes, I'm just watching the stories like they were discovered in an archaeological dig, right? There's the part of me that can criticize it from the perspective of, well, they should have followed up on that romance. There's other part of me that can criticize it from the perspective of, that wasn't a very big romance in the first one.
Yes.
So I think my romance critique is, I wish that, either the kiss hadn't been there and instead it was just a cheek touch, and the love that Rose is talking about is clearly much more platonic or sibling or maybe romantic, but not as explicit as that little kiss, or follow it up, one or the other.
This is one of those moments where I will look back at Last Jedi, and I think I agree with you, even just in the course of this conversation. It's not a giant critique of that moment. I think it's a great moment in terms of
it's a beautiful shot, right?
Yeah, beautiful shot. What Rose says is a pretty powerful statement that gets used a lot, and you and I feel connects to a lot of other Star Wars stories.
Yes,
absolutely, including Rise of Skywalker. Again, the emotional canon. That's why we have that term. Don't less about the plot and more about the themes that go straight to George's heart. Well, maybe he has two.
He's a Time Lord. Yes.
Yeah, I've loved him to live for 200 years. But that romance it fell flat for me in Last Jedi. So, that there again too might have been why I had less. It was less jarring. It was jarring in terms of story, but like, cool, yeah, that's great. I'm good with that. They go here, she goes here. I wish her here was bigger.
Yeah. And there's a part of me sometimes like, ooh, well, I might have been great with a more of a sweeping romance in Last Jedi of
Totally.
Making it such a romance of these are these two people who have this interesting relationship. Or Rose thinks he's a hero, then he kind of fails her, but then he sees the world through her eyes and understands and wants to be a part of things and wants to fight for the resistance. And through that, they are also falling in love. That would have been fun. That would have been great. And I would have been fine with that. And then I think it really would have had to continue in the Rise of Skywalker. I think the biggest thing for me is, since the kiss was small and ambiguous as to how, big strings romance it was, that the fact that the romance itself isn't followed up on isn't huge for me with Rise of Skywalker. I think what Rose says in that moment, like you were just saying, that's how we're going to win, not by fighting what we hate, but by saving what we love, is so important that I think it would have been great to have a more direct follow-up on that in the Rise of Skywalker. I think it is followed up on in action that characters takes and in themes. But this is one of those moments where I was like, well, it might have been great if when Rose is when Finn is refusing to turn around and wants to take down the Star Destroyer in Rise of Skywalker, and telling Rose it's okay. when she is worried about him not making it back to the transport. Be like, what would have been like if Finn had been like, it's okay, Rose, I'm doing what you taught me, I'm safe. And I thought about that. And then that's in the novelization of Rise of Skywalker. Exactly there in that moment. And there's a part of me like, that is what would have really made the Rose Finn relationship utterly sing and be emotional canon and have harmony of a reflection from Finn of like, Rose, a part of who I am now is because of you.
Yeah.
And it's about their emotional connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong. The fact that it's in the novelization, other than Ray Carson being very intuitive as a storyteller herself and picking up on that moment, it just there's notes maybe to me being played there that we just don't hear, and that does not now just reviewing a movie like things need to be in the movie. I get it, but yeah, it shows to me that it's there. It's just it being more explicit would have served that better.
Yeah, and that's always the question as a writer of, is this idea clear through the actions?
Right.
Then that's much better than saying it. But then sometimes every once in a while you find a moment where no, it needs more. And I think maybe that was a moment that ultimately did need more for me, in my subjective opinion. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, I just think the camera should have whipped over and Beaumont and Ken would have been like, they have a appreciation for each other. And their lives are forever connected.
Yes, I think Beaumont Ken not as great with exposition as I think Larma Dacey is. So I think there should have been a report from Larma Dacey on how romantic relationships are going within the Resistance itself.
Yes,
solid stuff. All right, one of the next moments of potential friction that fans discuss is Rey's past. Right, this is one of the big ones that people do. I think have really strong emotional connections to Rey and her story. So I always want to give the utmost respect to, I know Rey's story is really important to people and they connect it to their own lives. So we aren't sometimes just talking about Rey. We're talking about real people's real feelings about their real lives. And I have the utmost respect for that. Right. But in The Last Jedi, Kylo looks into Rey's mind and finds what he believes to be true, or rather what she believes to be true, that her parents sold her off, so she's no one. And in The Rise of Skywalker, Kylo reveals he only saw the part of the story that Rey knew, and he now knows the full truth. She's related to Palpatine. So does this work for you? And if not, or does this bother you, rather? And if it doesn't bother you, do you understand why it bothers some people? 100%
understand why it bothers other people on a lot of levels, just from the she's a Palpatine, well, that wasn't really, we didn't feel that was there before, or the personal journey stuff. When someone connects to a fan or a viewer or listener, whatever, connects to a character or storyline, and it becomes so personal, and then something happens to that character that might knock that fan off their game a little bit, in the sense of just like, well, now I was drawing inspiration from that story. I needed the story to go that way. Whatever it is, I always want to express that I respect that. I sometimes get a little grumpy with it when it's used again as a critique for a film or a TV show, especially when I think I like when a character goes something or makes a choice, there's more lessons for someone else then. So I think you're cutting off inspiration for other people too.
Yes.
And I as fans, we all should look beyond ourselves. And so that's where I'll say with that. But yeah, I know some people, I have friends of mine who are like, I needed this out of the Rey storyline and I didn't get it, and I'm upset at that. There's no part of me, no 1% fiber of my being that's going to take that away from them. That's not the spirit of Star Wars, number one. And I think we can all be better fans. But yeah, it's there. But so I respect that. But I got to tell you, love this. I love this even more. I love this each time I watch Rise of Skywalker. It works for me on a pretty inspirational level. I'm anyone who's maybe relatively new or has not listened to your Star Wars counseling, Joseph, on Rey's journey. Still one of our more popular downloaded episodes for good reason. I can't keep up with your words there, but for me, the general thing on it is like, yeah, I think Rey was wanted to, discovers she's from nowhere in a way, then discovers a little bit more, and then kind of chooses to go back to nowhere. And that's a TV guide summary of what's going on. But I draw inspiration from the things that are presented because it's the next part of the story. I just love hearing the three parts of the song of Rey and her journey and who she is, the wanting to be connected, but too afraid to step into the larger story. Just unlike Luke always dreaming, like, I got to get out of this place. Rey going, I want out, but I can't leave. And there's reason and I'm stuck here and I don't want to move forward and I don't feel I belong. And then you climb the steps and you are part of the story. You are not just in it, you are. And then wanting that connection and having that connection batted away because you have no connection. You don't belong here. You're nobody. There was no part of me that felt that was the end of the journey. And to discover that, you're not just your great fear of being nobody, is worse than you can imagine. You are connected to a great evil, and the power that you have that you don't know, that you haven't known what to do with since you got it, like on a bigger level.
Yeah.
Can be used, can destroy people, can hurt people. BB-8 getting squished in the beginning of the film sets this tone, right? So simply. It's a 3-part song that I just love where there again comes the music stuff. Well, I love where it ends up. And I'm moved by her choices by standing up to Palpatine at the end. You want me to hate, but I'm not going to hate.
Not even you. Yeah. A true Jedi moment. Yeah, I think for me, I do understand why this one can be very emotional for people, because if you live for 2 years with this idea that Rey is no one, she's not connected to any other family, she's entirely defined by herself and her own journey. I think Star Wars has this very important balance of saying the individual is important. You need to choose who you need to be, and you need to find your own inner strength, but also we are all connected, and community and connection matters. And that no one challenge is really about the individual side of it, of who are you going to decide to be. And I understand why people would gather strength from the perspective of, you're not defined by a name that came before you or a bloodline came before you. You are defined by you. There's strength in that. And I think we all need to find strength when we're trying to define ourselves as individuals, and believe that we can find that strength to stand on our own, particularly when maybe other people are being negative towards us, of like, where are your bona fides to show that you matter? And being able to say, my bona fides are that I exist and I am me, and that's all I need to be. I really get that, and I really understand that that why that perspective then can make people bump on the whole Palpatine thing.
Right.
But what really works for me, if you strip away any of the behind the scenes and who planned what when and who should have what when, and just watch the story, the emotional journey of Kylo and Rey on this point just sings for me, right? Because Kylo is this tragic character who is mired in darkness, but is being pulled to the light, and he deeply doesn't want to be alone. He wants to be seen by Rey. He wants to be understood by Rey. He wants to be joined by Rey, but still being enraptured with the dark side. He manipulates her horribly, right? Yeah. And even if he believes that that he saw the truth and that her parents died, just sold her off for drinking money and died, he says it in the most hurtful, manipulative way possible. He's not trying to build her up. He's not trying to say, you don't need any name to define you. You just be you. And that's great. He's not giving her a thumbs up. He's saying, what you've always wanted is longing and connection. And guess what? You don't have it. You're nothing. You're no one, but I'll give it to you.
Right.
It's a hurtful manipulation of the truth. And then when he finds out this other level of truth, that she is related to Palpatine, he does the same thing, still mired in his darkness, wanting to connect with her. He is manipulative again and saying, you're destined to fall to darkness, just like I am. This is less about you, Rey, more about me, Kylo. I want to believe that I couldn't have made the choice of anything else. I was just destined. It's in my blood. It was going to happen. We're destined to darkness, both of us. So again, he is telling her truth in a way that is manipulating her. So it all really works from the Kylo perspective. And then from the Rey perspective, I just so enjoy it. Enjoy is a weird word. I think it works and is meaningful as an escalation of fears for Rey. It's so well established in The Force Awakens that what she wants is belonging. She doesn't want to leave Jakku because her family is going to come back. Maz gives her the wonderful advice of, the belonging you seek is not behind you. It's ahead of you. So in Last Jedi, when she's still wrestling with those things of, are you ever going to belong anywhere? It's the worst thing that she could hear from Kylo of, no, you're not connected to anyone. You don't belong anywhere except for maybe with me. And she resists that. She resists that. And then in this window in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, she does find belonging and connection. She already has some with Luke and some with Finn, but now she really has it with the whole Resistance family, with Leia being her actual master. And then, yeah, everything that she's going through with her powers, which we'll talk about more, is worrying that she can't entirely control them and master them, and that she will hurt people around her, and that she will lose a little bit of this belonging that she's finally found. And that's the perfect escalation then from Last Jedi, where Kylo plays on these fears of, well, now that you have belonging, you're going to lose it because you don't get to choose who you are. You are destined to be not just no one, you are destined to be the worst thing in the galaxy. And it's just such an great escalation of Rey's fear of, I fear I don't belong. Oh, now I do belong. Now I fear I'm going to be the worst thing ever, which is someone who is destined to hurt the people I love, and I don't get a choice in it.
Yeah, Palpatine, Vader had, Luke had his family around him. You ain't got nothing. I'm your only family. The found family, the power of the found family that Rey gets after that. And go into the in the Kylo moment of the you don't have you don't have your power. You have his power. Is this damning insult? It's such a dark line, and with great purpose to me. And it's a line that I know some people don't love. And I get it, and I get why in a real world sense that maybe they took it in some ways, but for the story, for what Kylo consistently does with her, yeah, you got this. It's not even, you can't even control it because it ain't even your power. You're not getting rid of that. It's in you. It's in your blood. It's in my blood. And like I said, let's destroy the past because I don't want to face it.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with it. Yeah, and you have his power. I understand why people are viscerally upset by that line, but my interpretation is that you are supposed to be, because it's an awful thing Kylo is saying while he is still caught up in the darkness, to hurt Rey and to take away her agency. And I think what ultimately works really well for me and makes me feel like Rey's journey is really complete and doesn't change based on, what's on the back of her trading card. Is she a no one or is she a Palpatine? Regardless of her being a no one or a Palpatine, she still has to decide who she wants to be. She still needs to say no to that awful thing that Kylo says to her. The two awful things, that she's no one and that she is defined by Palpatine. And she has to say no to both of those things and say, I will choose who I want to be. I will choose how I want to use my power. I will look back on my own life, my own experiences, and allow those to define me. And I feel like if she's a no one or a Palpatine, the emotional conclusion of Rey's journey is both finding that connection she seeks and fully forming herself as an individual and saying, I'm here, I matter, here's my choice, here's who I am.
And this, if I go back to what I was kind of saying up top, is why I often say she kind of chooses to be from nowhere. What I mean is, you've just explained my own point better of Kylo saying you're no one. The idea though is you're Rey from nowhere, meaning you're your own hero in the story, right? And that's where a lot of people took inspiration for it. I think particularly at the end with the Battle of Palpatine, that's what she and for me spiritually goes back to. I'm rejecting your family name, rejecting my family name, rejected the idea that these dark powers and the hate will dominate me. I'm going to stand up against that. I'm going to choose to be my own individual in this moment and connect with those around me. And then later on comes I'll take the Skywalker name and all that kind of stuff. To me, it's the end of the film. But to me, the end of that direct A to B journey is her standing up to Palpatine in that moment and the not hate moment. And I think a lot of that goes back to even what Kylo's saying in that moment. Their scenes are just the best together. I love them.
Mm-hmm.
It's so moving and just that the anger. And again, I think sometimes that moment of you don't have your own power, you have his power. I don't mess up the quote because I always do. To me, that wasn't a shot across the bow at Last Jedi.
No,
it was such a powerful moment for Kylo, an a-hole. He's an a-hole at that moment, doing bad things. His own redemption, his own thing. And part of it, all the way, by the way, this also ties to Kylo and just the actual taking in of the film, which might have been even the original question you're asking me, Joseph, is that opening scene is why I love that opening scene. I love it for a lot of reasons, including it's the Star Wars Gothic horror and all these kind of things. But I was a big fan of Kylo killing Snoke and killing anyone who told him to take that mask off. And deciding, screw it, I am the supreme leader. I am the evil I want to be. I'm making my dreams come true. And then he spends a year in power, and then all of a sudden, everything he thought he knows, he's not in control. The power that thought he got, it never ends. That thirst for it never ends. The fear that you're going to lose, it never ends. Palpatine shows up. Now he's got it. He's going to reform his mask. He thought he knew a whole bit of a story. Palpatine's like, I got information you didn't even think you knew. And I love that for Kylo, that he's been punched in the gut too. Like he cannot get to the top spot. He wants to. He thought he got there in Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, we know nothing will heal his soul. Nothing that he's trying to jam in it will work.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. Is that Palpatine's return in The Rise of Skywalker obviously has a ton of effects on Kylo, but it really does serve to say, yeah, it's kind of like there's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always going to be a more evil fish. There's always going to be another specter for the past. It really escalates Kylo's fears as well.
Yeah.
Is Rey's.
Yeah.
I think last thing for me about the Rey's journey and that connection of people, very pointedly, Kylo and Palpatine, men trying to tell Rey what her power and what her identity is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that ultimately in Rise of Skywalker, she really does demonstrate that it's her power, and she does choose how to use it. She chooses to use it for the light. She chooses to use it to save people and to oppose the darkness. So that's one for me, where just it really works in actions of like, I'm not defined by my blood. I'm not defined by what other people tell me I am. Unless it's advice I want from friends and I decide to take it on board, great.
Yeah.
But she decides who she is and how to use her power that is hers by her actions.
You had said it come out of Rise of Skywalker of just like hold on here. Palpatine isn't saying sit on the throne and I'll sit next to you like a Grima worm whispering in your ears. He wants to possess her. He wants to take her. She will not exist after this in a sense. And that's this giant evil presence, this power, this giant, if you will, even this masculine energy wants to take all that from her. She stands up against that. I think that was there in the story too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to talk more about the arcs of Rey and Kylo. We got so excited. We went in deep on that one. I want to talk
3.
I want to talk more about another major moment of potential friction. We touched on it a little bit already, but in The Last Jedi, of course, Snoke is killed and Kylo rises to become Supreme Leader of the First Order, potentially leaving him to be the big villain of the next film. But then, of course, we learn that Snoke was Palpatine's puppet, and vile old Sheev is the ultimate villain. You were just speaking to this really eloquently of what that means for Kylo. Is this moment then at all? Is there any friction here for you? This change between, maybe Kylo's going to be the big villain. Nope, Palpatine's back. Is there any friction there for you, or does it just all work from the emotional canon?
There was friction going in, based on just the idea of once we knew Palpatine was back in any way, and the Sith haunting stuff you talked about up top, and there was a lot of that. I think I've said a few times back in the day, I was like, I hope he doesn't just pop out and go, "Hi, I'm back. I'm a clone." Like, and then essentially, and I would argue he's not a clone in the typical Star Wars sense. His essence, his spirit, has been transferred into something else. But that's the details for Beaumont Ken to work out later. I love, like a lot of folks, love that Snoke is chopped in two and is dead in Last Jedi. A lot of the reasons just said about what it meant for Kylo. In a weird way, it was an inspirational moment for Kylo. I'm gonna be who I want to be. I was worried though going into the film, like, all right, but then what was bad? Because I wanted the answers. Where was Rey Sloane? What happened here? Give me the Wikipedia entry on the First Order. I want to know, and guess what? I still want to know. Still want to know what happened to Rey Sloane. I'm going to bang that drum to the end of time till I get it in a story. But Palpatine coming back made sense for episodes 1 through 9. It's not a giant leap for me to make to say 7 and 8 that he was in some way, shape, or form behind some of it, even if it wasn't on a logistical every minute of the day type of thing. It just was this thing that was there. the Operation Cinder stuff and everything going on with Gallius Rex. It was presented in the aftermath, and I know not everyone read those books going into the films. Spiritually connected to me. Palpatine does not want to lose his power. Palpatine lost, and he lost big, and he can't accept it. He can't peacefully move on. That's not what Sith do. That's the big question that it served. And so for him to come in and just to be like, yeah, you thought you won. You didn't. You thought you were worshiping that burnt mask of this fallen Sith Lord, and you don't even know that he turned good in the end, or whatever we think Kylo or Ben knows about that story, yet to really be nailed down. Palpatine just finally shows back up. I'm playing the long game. I am the fandom menace, always there in the shadows. It spiritually connects to me. I always say it's how you execute the idea. And that opening scene just batted me across the face. Like, boom, it's all out the window because Palpatine's back. Kylo's scared. Rey is something else. And it never was a point of friction from that point on. But going in, it was.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean about the point of friction. We discussed that. We've discussed before that somehow Palpatine returned, and should the actual return of Palpatine have been explained more in the film? Because that's a thing that people bump on, and sometimes I feel like, well, if that had been made a little bit more clear in the narrative of the film, then that would just not be a distraction for people, and that would be swell. So we could get to all this great stuff that you and I are talking about. But setting that aside, I mean, yeah, I think. Palpatine, you can follow his journey, and it makes sense. This master Sith planner who is never going to let go. He is fulfilling his own words from Revenge of the Sith of all who gain power are afraid to lose it. He's clinging to power. He's clinging to life in this rotting body hanging from a claw. Plotting in the shadows because that's all he can do right now, and or just get a young, force strong body, to ride around. So it all makes sense from Palpatine. It's enjoyable from the whole arc of Palpatine's story. It's enjoyable for me that he is the big bad of these 9 films of the Skywalker saga. But we already talked a little bit about how he kind of serves Rey's story by taking her fear of her power and could it be used to hurt people and making it really concrete. So he's a way to really actualize and make concrete Rey's fear. But he does the exact same thing for Kylo, right? Because exactly what you're saying, Kylo's main issue throughout these films is that he wants to escape the past. He feels like he couldn't live up to his all his famous parental figures. He was afraid that they didn't want him. He was convinced that they feared him, that they'd all turn on him. That's why he's telling Rey in Last Jedi all about what he thinks went down at the temple, because he wants Rey to understand why he wants to kill the past, why he just wants to go all parental figures need to be gone. It needs to be just me. And he goes through attempting to kill them all, right? And he thinks he has for a little while. For the most part, he's not engaging with his mom, and everyone else is gone. And then Palpatine's like, nope, you can't kill the past. You can't escape its shadows. You have to face and deal with them. And he's just this other ultimate parental figure. And he pushes on this great button that's very clearly established in The Force Awakens when Rey sees in Kylo's mind and says, I see that you're afraid that you'll never be as powerful as Darth Vader. And here you got Palpatine popping up going, become what your grandfather couldn't. That is Palpatine putting his broken, gross finger right on Kylo's weakness, right?
100%. Be what he couldn't be, but I know you can't do it either. Like, I love it. I love it. And it's all of it's a good I was all on board. Let me start over. Let me go back to Snoke and his gold robe. I want to know more. Did he have more apprentices? He said he did. And what's going on? And if it had you could have told a version of the story that's 7, 8, 9, you go confront Snoke and win the day, right? That could have been there. Absolutely could have been there. We've seen it before. We've seen it in every other story. The fact that the big slice and dice in the middle of Last Jedi or towards the end of Last Jedi, it just changed the game. And then that became much more interesting to me. And connecting, and I know we're going to talk about connections later, but connecting to the overall theme of the sequel trilogy, one close to your heart, Joseph, is just like, this is the shadow of what came before, and you must always be fighting these evils. So to have that evil be the evil, it just worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I believe that you absolutely could have told a story where Kylo is the big bad. One of the things that I think really works about Palpatine coming back is if you didn't have another villain, you potentially have Kylo as the big bad throughout, which means you might be dealing with his turn back to Ben in the third act. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the structure of Rise of Skywalker is because Palpatine is the big bad, there's all this lovely room for Kylo's turn back to Ben at the end of the second act.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben does wonderful, amazing things in the third act, but the third act is about Rey. And it's structurally puts the focus on Rey. And I'm not saying that you couldn't write a movie where Kylo is the big bad and he could turn in the third act and it could still be about both Kylo and Rey. All I'm saying is that I appreciate that Rise of Skywalker was structured to put emphasis on Rey. She is the main character. And I personally appreciate that. I know other people might not, but I really enjoy that there is an unambiguous focus.
Yeah, a clear one. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other moments of potential friction that you want to discuss before we take a break and get into harmony?
Oh, I'd love to get into harmony. Just one. I don't know. I'm sure you've got a couple, maybe, but one that seems to come up a lot, and I understand it, and I want to acknowledge that I understand it, and I want to acknowledge that maybe I wish there was something in it in Rise of Skywalker that maybe took away this problem for folks, even though it's less of a problem for me. I call this one the Broom Boy theories. Luke and his inspiration for the galaxy, and what that meant, and how there was a lot of folks like, no one yelled for Luke at the end of Rise of Skywalker. That's just one example that I had given to me. And I still to this day, I understand it because that's what part of the piece and purpose of Luke's death, and his death would go on to inspire the galaxy. I am there for that. I still think that's the case. I push against the idea that Tamiri Blagg alone, because he's in the final shot, was meant to be anything more. I have folks still going, hey, where was Broom Boy in the movie? You thought Broom Boy, Tamiri Blagg, was going to be in the movie, or anyone in that final sequence was going to be in episode 9 fighting right now with a laser sword? No, that's Rian Johnson. That's Rian Johnson shooting himself on film, going, this was me as a kid being inspired by the story I just told you, being inspired by the legend of Luke Skywalker. It was a different ending, but it also served to be in the story. And I think it's there. It's just logically the way they took it from me. It's my interpretation. Luke does inspire. The message travels. The galaxy gets the word, but that doesn't mean everyone was ready to rise up. Doesn't mean they knew how to rise up. And you need Poe, you need Lando, you need others to lead them. That's what Poe says. And so it's a point of friction that I completely understand. I wouldn't have minded a beat Poe and Ken, our punching bag of jokes today. Be like, well, Luke inspired a lot of people. Maybe we can connect to that message. Like, I get it. But it is the emotional connection, the emotional canon. That's why I want to print it on a t-shirt. That is what is present for me. So therefore, it's a point of friction for others. And I understand it, but I just don't think it exists for me.
Yeah, I think for me, that is definitely one of like my preferences. I love that idea and that moment so much of Luke allowing himself to be seen as a legend. It is such a validation of the Jedi, which is an EU novel that I wish I could read. The Validation of the Jedi. Yeah, but to me, it is about inspiring the next generation, right? I've been taken to saying lately to express why I love The Last Jedi is it challenges and subverts lots of things we love about Star Wars in order to validate them in that third act. And Tamiri Blagg being this little kid, Oni Hosea being the great storyteller, and all three of them, Arashel Sar, I believe, is the girl, all playing Star Wars action figures and holding up the broom and dreaming of going out there and being a hero and helping other people and standing up to darkness. And that's just a beautiful moment all by itself. And, if the story is just, that rang out and younger generations coming up really know that story, That's great. That's beautiful all by itself. There's also a part of me that would have happily taken a way to mention it or reference it,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even in the conversation between Poe and Zori, I would have happily taken I heard that this Jedi showed up, and Poe's could be like, yeah, no, he did. It's amazing, but he's gone now and no one else showed up. Like even something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe that wouldn't sing. I don't know. But it's definitely a point of let's get some shout outs to to that
Yeah.
moment.
Yep.
Understandable. Only thing for me is it comes up sometimes of people not liking Hux being the spy for the First Order and not thinking that tracks. And again, I respect all opinions. My strong opinion about this is it tracks so beautifully because for me, I think what is made clear on screen is this is not a fun life for Hux this last year. He is we see him physically abused by Kylo at the end of The Last Jedi, more than once, right? And we see him not being a respected member of the First Order, being told to shut up with the absolute power of the Solo finger, right? the shut up finger. So Hux has been tortured by Kylo. And then that quote, this is one of the most elegant lines, I think, in Rise of Skywalker, is when he says, when he reveals himself as the spy and is helping our resistance friends, and he says, I don't care if you win. I need Kylo Ren to lose. Not only does that ring true to me for somebody who is in something like the First Order, because the only ideology of First Order is might makes right, and I want to be the one with might. I want to be the one with power. He's not the one with power. So he would happily turn on those who are using their power and abusing him. But what I really love about this is it's light side, dark side. It's the opposite of what Rose says.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Save what we love, not fighting what we hate. And here comes Hux with the complete opposite. Like, I don't care if anything's ever better in the galaxy. I just want you to stick it to the guy I don't like. It is just perfect. It matters not only that we fight, but it matters what we're fighting for.
I love it. Is there enough Hux in Rise of Skywalker for me? I think it's in end of the day just right. Donald Gleason's such a great performer, but so maybe that's why sometimes I would want more. But this goes back to I even had this an off air conversation with a friend a couple years ago. I on this podcast feed, I used to make fun of Hux's speech in Force Awakens, right? It's so big, melodramatic, on which we stand, and I it's not that was how that was necessarily intended, but it's this big, giant, second generation evil, literally with Brendel Hux's father in the Empire, now First Order, and then I've always loved that Rian Johnson, in a way, or Less Jedi, in a way, comes along and just says that big, blustery evil has no merit, no purpose, no depth. It's just evil to be evil's sake, and he doesn't even really know where it's coming from, and he's undercut right from the beginning. He's not as powerful, and he's bumbling, and that's why Captain Kennedy works for me so well, because you scrambled those fighters 5 bloody minutes ago. You're an ineffectual leader because you're nothing but rage. You're nothing but anger. You're shallow. And I think that tracks for me. Now we're just talking about connections, Joseph, I guess.
Yeah, no, a lot of our friction conversation was acknowledging the friction and then discussing how we think it's harmony. Mea culpa. We like these movies. We warned people at the top of the podcast.
Yeah. So the slide from Hux being, at the top of the pops and first Force Awakens, sliding on down to where he is just cast aside because he's not saving the day. That works for me as well. I can get it. I can get some of the friction there, but at the end of the day, no, I love it too.
Yeah. You know what? Here's what I will say is I love all these films, but I do have my own little personal subjective critiques every once in a while. I didn't like how fast Huck's death went. Like I thought, I liked the surprise that Pride turns around and blasts him, but I felt like that there should be like a shot lingering on Hux. Like I shouldn't say should have, because I don't like that. I would have enjoyed it if there were a shot that just took a moment to take in the sadness of what became of this man who couldn't be better.
Yeah, who, by the way, was abused as a child, forced into this thing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that the think piece on Hux could still come, but yeah, I can get behind you on that one.
Yeah, and I might have more strong feelings since the first thing I heard when I walked out of The Force Awakens is getting texts from friends saying, "You look like General Hux."
I mean, I just don't even think it's true. I mean, first of all, I mean, looking like Donald Gleason's not a bad thing, number one. But I
Now, if
just,
anybody ever told me I look like Donald Gleason, I'd say thank you. But as I've
but
said before in stand-up jokes, like you look like a space Nazi
yeah,
doesn't feel like a compliment.
it does not.
It does not. Any other moments of friction you want to discuss before we take a quick break?
Well, there's the big moment, the big things of friction that exist, not for you and I, but for others, and that's the fact that 7, 8, and 9 just exist.
Well, it was friction once upon a time that 1, 2, and 3 exist. So it goes, right?
So it goes.
There will always be friction. That's a part of Star Wars. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about some of the moments where we really see a great connection in The Rise of Skywalker back in a moment.
Hey, ForceCenter friends, make sure you're keeping up to date on all the great content from Jennifer Landa. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, you whippersnappers, ForceCenter's own Jennifer Landa continues to bring you fun, informative, and insightful laughs and moments.
Also, Jennifer brings her experience and perspective as a Star Wars loving mother to her DIY projects, blogs, and more. So be sure to head on over to jennylanda.com. That's JENILANDA.com for articles like how to make your own Darth Maul sneakers or 10 unique Star Wars baby gift ideas.
Follow Jen on Twitter and Instagram at Jennifer Landa and on TikTok as Jennifer Landa 1138.
And we are back to finish our discussion about the connections and sometimes the friction between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. We talked about a lot of the common things that people bring up about how they feel they don't connect. Now we're going to talk about moments of connection. So, Ken, here we go. Let's talk about the dyad and its power. In The Last Jedi, Rey and Ben/Kylo make this intimate connection, right? And it's a great mechanic of the plot that Snoke claims he bridged their minds for his own ends. But even after Snoke is cut in half, tongue sticking out, there seems to still be a connection between Kylo and Rey, and then Rey severs it at the end of The Last Jedi. That's my interpretation of when she closes the Falcon door. And then in The Rise of Skywalker, I believe we see that connection strengthened. Rey and Ben/Kylo can connect across space and fully pass objects back and forth. We learn that their connection is unique and powerful. They are a dyad in the Force, two that are one. Does this do these connections all work for you? Does it feel like one story evolving?
It really does feel like one story evolving. It's so funny. We talked about friction, a lot of connection ended up coming out of that. Here we're talking about connection, and I sometimes have a friction with the dyad just in some mystical way where I'm like, I don't fully understand it, but I enjoy it. And one of the reasons, let me just say, one of the reasons I enjoy it, particularly in Rise of Skywalker, if having the dyad just gives you the one scene where he's on Kijimi, she's in his studio apartment on the Star Destroyer, and they get in the lightsaber fight across time, space, and dimensions. Or well, I mean, she was floating above him, and that shot where he the red berries fall on the white floor in his chambers. I'm there. Any other questions I have, I'll toss them out just for that moment. That's one of my favorite little moments in Star Wars.
Yeah,
I love that it exists.
It's just visually great. Like if somebody had told you beforehand, like there's going to be a lightsaber shot where berries spill, you'd be like, "Cool, I'll give it a shot." Like that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then of course just the utter power of the pass of the Skywalker blade to Ben as he's facing the knights, right? There's a lot of just great fist pumping, meaningful but still just thrilling applaud in the theater action moments that come of that dyad power.
Yeah.
But talk to me about the rest of it.
The rest of it is even if as I'm trying to, because I'm a nerd, but I was more of the G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Robotech, less of D&D, which isn't a blanket reference. Just like, so sometimes when things like dyads and, they were not saying that's related just to D&D, but you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, what? Okay, but what? Because I have a lot of my friends are like, oh, a dyad. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Throw that out the window. I said, evolution, the growing, the continuing of the story. Their connection was so powerful in Last Jedi. It's such a fun bit of storytelling, especially what they came up with, the connection and the sound design of the connection. Just the fact that the actors were like, yeah, don't worry, I'll be in the room for you too. We're gonna shoot this scene as is, as real. It's palpable to me, and for that connection to grow, even maybe just despite what Rey might want of this situation. And even with Kylo, it challenges him because she knows him. It goes back to Force Awakens to me, that great dual interrogation scene that's so powerful, and what I call Kylo's first defeat. So cocky, so arrogant. I'm a monster. Let me take my helmet off. Look at my beautiful flowing hair. I'm not a monster, but I'm in control. Oh, crap. Your power is emerging, and you saw my fears. Oh, my God. No one else knows me like you, and that scares the hell out of me. And all that makes sense to build towards this thing, this really powerful, unexplained connection. Seemed to be there from the start, and you could see this even as a writer. We're trying to keep the behind the scenes stuff out of it, but you can see if you put it together, what can we do with this? Wow, that was pretty awesome. What can we do with it? Make it stronger, whether they want to or not. They don't even know what to play. We got to see what that does to them, and it just creates some beautiful moments for me.
Yeah, I think that one of the just great things about Rey and Ben/Kylo's story is that they are these people who are very much, connected across space and time. They are the only people right now who are both going through something kind of similar, of having this incredible raw power and having this responsibility of choosing what to do with it, and kind of having these mirror issues where Rey feels like she doesn't have any parental figures in her life. She doesn't have any connection. And Kylo is haunted by all these different figures who are making him feel less than, whether they mean to or not. So they have these great and interesting connections, and that gets built on so well in The Last Jedi, where Rey is desperate for someone to help her figure out how to what this power is, and how to find her place in the galaxy and find her place in the story. And Ben so desperately wants to be seen and understood by someone, and Rey is the perfect person for that. So it's this great, honest, intimate connection. And then I feel like Rise of Skywalker just does take it to this, not even another level. It just looks at it in a different light. That there's a lot in Star Wars, and this is where you really mix the ingredients and you have preferences about, there's too much of that spice in this Star Wars dish for one person or another. But Star Wars has always taken the very real and the very personal and blown it up into these, great mythic levels. In fact, in between breaks, as we were recording podcasts today, someone reposted one of these old interview clips with George Lucas, asking him, how do you be a hero? What does it mean to be a hero? Can people do that anymore? Can people be heroes? And Lucas gives this very nice response of saying, yeah, you can, every day you can choose to be a hero. And if you have compassion, if you treat other people with kindness, or if you treat people like they're less than you. I'm paraphrasing. And he says, but he very specifically says, you don't have to have a big laser sword fight, but you can choose to be a hero every day. And the reason I bring this up is, to me, that's a huge part of what Star Wars is. Going back to the original trilogy, you don't have, Luke is a massive mythical metaphor for be nice to people at the grocery store. Luke is a massive mythical metaphor for figure out who you are as you go out in the world and choose who you want to be. And I feel like I connect that back to this with Rey and Kylo, where Last Jedi is dealing with them a little bit more on just like, what is their emotional connection? And Rise of Skywalker continues that, absolutely. But just like taking our everyday choices and turning them into a young hero with a laser sword like the original Star Wars did. This dyad idea takes it to this sort of mythical level, and it makes it it romanticizes something that is real. We can have intimacy and connection with people who we both want to connect with and are but frustrated by and trying to understand, and we're bonded because we have similar problems but different problems, but we just feel like fate means us to be together and work this out. And the dyad is just, it's taken that to a mythic level, and I think really reinforcing that Rise of Skywalker cares so much again and again and again about community is valuable, working together is valuable. The idea of two lightsabers, the idea of a dyad that is the most powerful when it's connected, the idea that a small group can function best by inspiring a larger group to come together. There's so much in Rise of Skywalker that wants to reinforce that idea of individuals matter. You need to make your choices, but we are stronger together. And the dyad is, to me, just another way to do that.
I can't even add to that too much. Just a powerful statement on what it really means beyond just a term Ken didn't first really understand in the theater. But our pal Andres Cabrera was been on ForceCenter before, around this time when we were doing the final iteration of Jedi Council. He had said something, and I had summarized it in a way, and I still go back to it and listening to you talk about this and Rey and Ben and the connection of he just said that, again, I literally paraphrased it on air with him. It's just the idea of a child of destiny born in the light that chose darkness, a child from nowhere born in the darkness that chose the light, and how they connected and how they're intertwined from the start, and how that played out and how it just continued to grow and grow into those final moments and what it meant. I take inspiration from it, the lessons and the mythic. And then that's very mythic to me is what made me think that is when you said that stuff. It's just like, that is big, giant. Let's go chase the dragons because we're knights of old, and that's a myth, and that's powerful, and it can connect to your daily life, walking into the grocery store.
Yeah, it feels like, again, connecting to Luke Skywalker, the nobody farm kid who actually has a great destiny and is handed his father's ancient sword. Like, yeah, it feels mythic like that. And then just on kind of a detail level, these are things that pop into my mind when sometimes people feel like Rise of Skywalker ignored Last Jedi. There's a couple of very specific moments that I think this dyad is building on. We've got Luke's line. I've seen this raw strength only once before in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now. It's a direct line in Last Jedi from a person that I think the audience is supposed to trust their knowledge, that Luke's like, yeah, the way you use the Force, the way you're connected to it, and the way Ben is connected to it is extremely powerful and extremely the same. So that's just like one concrete thing. And then another great thing is a moment in Last Jedi that just by itself is intriguing, mysterious, poetic, suddenly becomes built on in this great way of, remember in The Last Jedi, that water from Ahch-To physically passes to Kylo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a great development when you just watch them as stories of like, oh, they're connecting in The Last Jedi, but they're still working it out. And they discover Kylo discovers this very small bit of like, where did that come from? How did that transfer to me? And it's a great just setup for the realization that they have this intimate power of being able to pass things back and forth and physically connect through the mists of space.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little detail. Well said, well pointed out. Of just, again, if you're sitting in an office trying to break a story down, and you're like, what about this? What about this little moment? Where could we take that? I love that aspect, and it's so well played by Adam Driver. You're right. He is curious. This is
like, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Is
there a leak in the Star Destroyer? Nope. It's
Hawk's
a dyad.
in here. Yeah.
Hux mop this up. Yeah. All right. Any other dyad thoughts before we move on?
No, other than now I know really what it means, and I'm going to roll a perfect 20.
Excellent. This is a big one for me for points of connection. This is one that I feel real passionate about, and it is the story of the Jedi and should the Jedi continue. So Luke spends a great deal of The Last Jedi questioning the existence of the Jedi, which is fair because throughout the prequels, we watch them make some mistakes. And then Luke himself makes mistakes, and he's questioning those. Great. But even in Last Jedi, once Yoda sets the Uneti tree library on fire, Luke tries to rush back in and save the sacred Jedi text. So despite everything that Luke is saying, he still has this instinct that we shouldn't let that knowledge die. We shouldn't let the Jedi end. And then, of course, at the end, he really makes that extremely clear when he projects to Crate at the end of The Last Jedi, wielding the Skywalker blade and allowing himself to truly be seen as a noble Jedi standing up to the First Order. And then to make it even more clear that Luke Skywalker does now believe that the Jedi should continue, he's got that line where he says, "I will not be the last Jedi." So there's a lot of doubting in the first half of or more of The Last Jedi, but at the end, many moments from Luke really, really reaffirming the continuation of the Jedi. So then we get to Rise of Skywalker, and that spirit of, yes, the Jedi should be questioned, but they should continue. Rey's actively learning from those texts, right? And when she doubts herself and the Jedi, when she's at her lowest, Luke's spirit is there to help her forward after himself going through his moment of doubt. So that's a little bit of a picture for me of, I think, how it all is laid out in Last Jedi, and then sets Rey and Luke on their Jedi journey in Rise of Skywalker. Does this tale of the Jedi should continue work for you?
It works on a spectacular level. The thing that you've kind of been saying lately of Last Jedi, questions everything to in Star Wars to maybe validate it in the end, right? I mean, that's literally what Luke's going through. I love that you point out, because it's always stood out to me that Luke's like, destroy it. Oh God, I got to get the books. It shows me there's something inside him, and he couldn't do it. And we learned from Jason Fry's novelization, like Luke was dressed in ceremonial Jedi gear, essentially, to burn the tree several times. When Rey finds him, he had just tried to do it. Yeah, essentially, it's the story there. Again, is it a detail beyond the movies? Yeah, but it's there. It's there in the Star Wars story, and so I love that. And I love, when the trailer dropped, I was at Orlando at the convention when the Jedi must end, and it's scandalous, but Luke doesn't end there. It doesn't end there, including with the lightsaber toss. I think we can get into that here in this section. So I love it. And at the end of Last Jedi, not only is he saying it, but it's like the movie's saying it. I've tossed the real world, and in real world discussions, I should say, I've tossed the prequel Jedi at some friends of mine. I'm just like, look what Lucas is asking here, or look what Lucas is presenting here of how the Jedi were destroyed. We grew up thinking they were wiped out by the Sith, particularly Palpatine and Vader. Yeah. That's the surface level, but really the destruction that happened from the inside and much earlier. You're going to rot from within more than you are going to be destroyed from without. George was asking that, and also saying we don't want that to happen because we kind of need the Jedi. They're good, and wanted you to think about that. And I think that all connects into Last Jedi, into what Luke was thinking, the direct reference to the prequels, and then it's reaffirmed at the end, and then everything where this ends up. Rey representing the Jedi, Rey not hearing the Jedi, but then connecting, all those kind of things. It does flow nicely for me.
Yeah, and I think the argument that is being made in many different Star Wars stories, everything from Yoda's wisdom to Luke about, a Jedi never uses the Force for attack, used it for knowledge and defense. Probably things that Yoda always believed, but certainly were crystallized by being through a war that didn't help anyone. Maybe individual people here and there in the Clone Wars obviously were saved by the Jedi, but ultimately it didn't behoove the Jedi to fight a war. So Yoda's always presenting that wisdom, and that's what we see the Jedi doing. Is the First Order has risen. The First Order is there. They are an offshoot of the dark side. We learn being puppeted by Palpatine, and they are going to run rampant across the galaxy. They are going to cause pain and horror and misery. And the point of the Jedi is to keep balance and not allow the dark side to take everything. So you need a Jedi to stand up to the dark side. And just kind of visually, literally, that's what both Luke and Rey do, right? Luke stands before Kylo and distracts him, and into the eyes of the galaxy and to the heroes there is literally like this one unstoppable guy standing up to that whole armada of machinery and evil. But then just on a functional level, he's just like, I'm literally holding the dark side back so my sister and all of my friends can live, so that the light side can keep going on to inspire others. And when Rey defeats Palpatine, it's very similar physical image of she is blocking that lightning from going out into the galaxy, that hate from going out into the galaxy, and stopping it. And I think that's, to me, that's really the idea. That's what the Jedi are at their best: their knowledge and defense.
Yeah.
And Luke wrestles with is yeah, but as soon as you get involved in trying to do the right thing, you end up fighting. And if you accidentally use violence in the wrong way for even a second, you can make things much worse. And poor Luke made a mistake, and he's haunted by it. And it's understandable that he's questioning it. But even by the end of Last Jedi, he's realizing that, but it's even worse for me to just do nothing while darkness marches over everything.
And the Force is going to find you in your dreams to let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great detail from Jason Fry's novel. The Force is, even when he's tried to disconnect to him, he's having dreams where the Force is like, yeah, it's not great to just sit around and do nothing.
Yeah, which is again, is a side discussion of just that was a powerful, prologue to the Last Jedi novelization that the clickbait articles then spawned into. Did you know Luke was married? Did you not read what was going on there? And therefore, it becomes this fandom that is thirsty for only plot details, or what they think are plot details, and not the themes and the lessons and the purpose for these big modern myths.
Yes, books should be used for knowledge and discussion, not clickbaits.
I 100% stand by that.
The other thing I wanted to highlight about this is just not only is there the kind of straightforward, by the third act of The Last Jedi, Luke is taking actions and saying words that reaffirm the Jedi. So to me, it is not surprising that he is encouraging Rey and Rise of Skywalker to move forward. But it's also, there's a real connection between what Luke went through in Last Jedi and the advice that he's giving Rey, right? Because Luke's journey is about fear. He failed Ben Solo, and he fears if he tries to train Rey, he'll fail her too. He fears that because he's made mistakes in the past, that if he goes out there and acts as a Jedi, he'll make more mistakes and he'll make things worse. He is acting on fear, right? He even uses the word, again, this line I've quoted before this episode, when he says to Rey, I've seen this raw strength only once before in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now. He's leading with fear. And then, in Last Jedi, Yoda convinces him to accept his mistakes, move beyond that. And, he goes and he acts in the spirit of the Jedi of knowledge and defense. He saves Leia, and he really, in saying, I will not be the last Jedi, he's really saying, Rey's going to continue this tradition of what I'm doing right now, standing up against the dark side. And then in Rise of Skywalker, when Rey experiences what Luke did of what she feels was a failure, lashing out, giving in to her anger and stabbing Kylo, she says, I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to, angry upset you from second act of Last Jedi, from first and second act was correct. I'm going to just hide away because any action I take, I'm afraid of my own darkness, or my potential darkness. I'm not gonna use my power. And Luke, having already been through exactly that, has that great line reading of, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And is basically saying, don't do what I did. And he goes again to that idea of fear, of, it was fear that kept me on this island. In the script doesn't hold your hand there. He doesn't reiterate what happened in Last Jedi and say, I failed Ben Solo, so I was afraid he doesn't go through it, but we saw it. And then it connects to all of the advice that he gives Rey. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. And again, it's this great mythic to speak about real experiences that we all go through. We all don't have to face our evil clone sort of grandfather with laser swords and lightning, but we all do have to confront our fear in order to not be held back by it. And that Luke really ties that to, that's what the destiny of a Jedi is confront fear so you can move past it, so you can help people, so you can, stand up to the dark side. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what the Jedi do. That's what the Jedi are for. That's why Luke encourages Rey to continue down the Jedi path.
Yeah. I still think some folks saw the beginning of that scene in Rise of Skywalker and then just left the theater and just didn't see the rest of the scene play out of what Luke was saying. It's a point of friction for people. You and I can acknowledge it's a point of friction and one that I've had, dare I say, thrown in my face as a fan off air by people. And I guess it would have helped if Luke caught the lightsaber, says, this ain't the way to treat the weapon of a Jedi. In fact, that's a lesson I learned from you, Rey, at the end of the third act. Remember when I tossed, remember that? Remember? Okay.
Remember when I tossed this lightsaber away and then chose to project this one to signal to you that I have now accepted it?
Yeah. Remember that? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I do get it. I really do get if like you're not doing a Star Wars podcast, you're not doing deep dives, and you really, really remember that moment from Last Jedi where he throws it over and then he catches it. And I understand how people can have a gut reaction of, oh, these movies are fighting with one another, which is why I so love talking about it this way, because I just don't think that moment was in any way to have those movies talk to each other, except for to say, Luke went through something in Last Jedi, and now he's got a different perspective because of it. And now he's the Luke who catches the lightsaber because he went on a journey and he changed.
And like you said too, Rey, it now finds herself in the exact same moment to a certain degree, and now the advice has a special extra meaning. So
yeah. And then the last thing for me, which can also be a moment of criticism or friction, of raising the X-wing in Rise of Skywalker. I think for me, when Rey sees the X-wing underwater in Last Jedi, that to me is a real moment of like, oh wow, this guy is serious. He's not leaving. He thinks it's worse to get involved. So I feel like Luke raising the X-wing, it's a great moment for Luke. It connects to other moments. You can dislike that, too much nostalgia, not enough, whatever. But in terms of just the emotional canon, what it means to the characters, for me, that's Luke saying, hey, Rey, again, mea culpa. I was wrong. This X-wing is a symbol of being willing to get involved. And before it was underwater, it was a symbol to me of like, that's how serious I am about not leaving. I crashed it underwater. And this is where I am now. It is, I am raising it as a symbol of, yes, we should get involved.
Yep. Plus Yoda's music plays. You think of Empire, and if that's too much nostalgia, put it straight into my veins, and I'll OD on it. I love it.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, probably 7 hours worth, but I think we can move on.
Okay. Yes, we will move on. So want to talk about some character arcs. Sure. Go through what I would argue are kind of the four big characters from the new generation. Rey and Kylo and Finn and Poe. Not that there aren't other characters, but we only have so much time. So let's talk about Rey's arc. Rey's established challenges in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I think, are longing for connection, right? Finding her place in the story. And as a part of that, also figuring out what to do with her power. In The Last Jedi specifically, she also wants to truly understand Ben and Kylo. That is extremely important to her. So those are what some of her motivations and challenges have been. Do you think those motivations are all continued and resolved in The Rise of Skywalker, or do you think any of them are dropped or ignored?
I really don't. I don't think so, especially because it's amazing to me how much a lot of Last Jedi builds on Force Awakens. I'm talking specifically about Rey and just her in the Unity tree. This power's been inside me. I don't know what to do with it. And then you have this. You got Leia, but other than that, you're left alone. There's also a lot of things on Leia's plate during this year. And then this power starts hurting people. It's so progressive in Rise of Skywalker. Each beat, the power, her power potentially hurts people, but she also knows she has the power to heal, obviously. So, yeah, it builds and builds and builds for me, where she then can use her power and knows what to do with it, has learned what to do with it. And it's a really complete journey. I'm not explaining it super well, I know, but it goes back to 7. Forget even the connections to Last Jedi. It builds from 7 all the way through to me.
Yeah, I really feel the same way. I think The Force Awakens in particular establishes so well that what she wants is belonging and connection. Obviously, she also wants to find out who she is and make her choices and shape herself as an individual. But she also wants to feel a part of something larger. That's just so explicit in Force Awakens. Where that Maz conversation, marking the days on her great at apartment. Um, but I just feel like every thread is picked up on, and some of them, very literally from The Last Jedi. I wrote down that same quote that you just quoted, that she says to Luke, something inside me has always been there, but now it's awake and I'm afraid. I don't know what it is or what to do with it, and I need help. She expresses crystal clear, I need guidance on how to handle this power, or I need to figure out how to use this power. Goes along with that Luke quote I've quoted twice about the amount of power you have is frightening. And the idea that you wouldn't be able to handle it right is frightening. So then when we go into Rise of Skywalker and she's frustrated because she's not able to do what? Connect with the Jedi of the past, which absolutely ties in to her desire for belonging, connection, guidance, understanding, understanding the past to understand who she is now. And she's frustrated by that.
Yeah.
She's not going out on missions, and Poe calls her out on that because she's training, because she doesn't want to use the power in the wrong way. She hurts BB-8. She hurts Chewie. She's terrified of failing Leia. She thinks she needs to earn the Skywalker family blade. And then, Kylo and Palpatine, again, press on exactly those issues that she has that are so well established of, yep, you're destined to not be able to do good with your power. You are destined to rule for the Sith and rule through power and strength and not be connected to anybody but us, the bad guys, who don't actually, Kylo does truly want to connect with her, but not in a healthy way at the beginning. Later, I think it's healthy. Beginning, not so great. Palpatine doesn't want to connect with her. He wants to possess her and use her, but they're lying to her and saying, every fear you have that you have this power and it's going to this power is going to turn against you. You've got a little bit of belonging finally, and you're going to ruin it. It's so plain into everything that's been established about Rey.
It's fear after fear after fear after fear. And Luke has some thoughts on what you're supposed to do with fear.
Confront, yes. And so do that whole word fear, that idea of fear, that kind of pops up a little bit in the prequels and is tied to Anakin's journey. Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. And I think for me, not to just concentrate on the negative, because that's how what challenges her in Rise of Skywalker, is just connected so powerfully and rises so organically from what she was challenged by in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. But it's resolved as well, right? Because she does find connection. She is connected to Finn and Poe and BB-8 and then Dio and her friends at the Resistance. We see that she does have anger, and why wouldn't she? She grew up alone on a desert planet, living a really hard life, learning to become a fighter who stands on her own 2 feet and can beat the crap out of people with her not Plagueis staff because she needs to have that strength. So she has not Palpatine's anger, she has her anger that she would have, but that's not the complete picture of who she is. She also has this side that has this instinct to help, going back to Force Awakens. Like, here's this BB-8, here's this lost orphan that I need to help. And what Luke and Leia, she doesn't just blindly follow Luke and Leia's advice. The advice she gets from Luke and Leia are, we don't care what's in your blood. We, Luke and Leia, see who you are, Rey. We see your spirit. We see your heart. We see anger, but we also see, more than anything, compassion and a desire to connect with others and help others and understand others. That's why she connected to Kylo, because she does want to understand. And Luke and Leia, I don't think, are telling her who to be. They are literally telling her to trust herself because she is a good person.
Yeah, and all yeah, it's always well said, sir. But to go back even to Maz and the speech you mentioned of just the belonging you seek, it's all in front of you, and so this does Rise of Skywalker does resolve even that for me. This person who was alone and thought she was alone, is so connected at the end. The connect. That's why I love that. I love that smile, the through the battered, bruised scared face of Ray, and just seeing and knowing and feeling that Ben is there, and Ben is there, and that
And
connection.
she is not alone.
She's
Yeah.
not alone. The connection. She is who she is. She is who she's choosing to be, but she's not alone. That's the power. That's the emotional canon that runs all through these films. When I say I feel it's connected, 7, 8, 9, and how that's there. Then the voices, and once I think she's there, she accepts it. And she feels it. And sometimes we need that in life. Talking about Star Wars of taking it into the real world. Sometimes you just need to feel. You block it, and the moment you kind of connect to something, you feel it, and then the voices start coming in, and the Jedi are there, and she rises, literally through the feeling the power of these connections for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think she takes individual action, but it is inspired by the encouragement of others and the belief in her from others. And I
Yeah.
do believe that we should be individuals, and we should be strong and competent, and we should be able to define ourselves. I believe strongly in the individual, but I also believe strongly in, of course, we need each other, and of course it's you can get up and stand up and do something difficult all by yourself, but it's also beautiful to do it knowing that all these people behind you are going, I believe in you, you can do this.
Hey, well, look, she's in Rise of Skywalker. I think she's because the end of Jedi, she gets on the Falcon and she cuts off the connection to Kylo, and Rey says, or excuse me, Leia says, "You have everything you need right here. Don't worry, we've got Porgs, Nine Numb, and R2. We're good." And then she still feels alone, and can't. There's still things, obviously a ton she's got to learn, and that's the Resistance Reborn book deals with that a bit. So I love when we pick up in Rise of Skywalker, she is fighting these connections. We're going to talk about Finn, but your big thing about Finn and Rise of Skywalker is wanting to be in the center of these connected. Let's hug it out, basically. but Rey feels incorrectly that she has to handle this burden alone. So naturally, you are going to be alone at that point. You are going to be more vulnerable if you're fighting those connections, even though you might want the connections. On paper, you're like, oh, this is burden. This is a burden I got to face.
Yeah.
I'm Frodo. I got to go by myself on this boat. And then Samwise is like, I'm coming with you. Like, and that connection is, it gets more and more powerful as it goes along. So I've always looked at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker as her going, I have great purpose. I must handle this alone. Please get away from me.
Yeah, I know. I think that's really great. A really, really great thing to highlight of that. Her challenge in Rise of Skywalker specifically is being so afraid that she'll hurt people close to her that she pushes them away. Right. I mean, talk about having a great mythic version of the mundane. Right. Like if I'm in a really bad place and a friend texts me and I don't answer, like, that's basically like a huge mythic version of that when Rey force pushes Kylo or Finn away, like, I'll deal with it by myself.
Yeah.
I don't need help from friends. I'm going to ghost you,
Absolutely. We can all fill on those islands, the emotional islands, not the Octo Islands. I'm on that island too a lot of times, but the emotional islands. It's easy to say, just push it away, especially if you're having some family issues and some power issues. And what am I connected to? I don't want to do this. I want to be out there. And you're going to push away any other connections because, think of romances, failed romances. You come out of a bad relationship, someone else in the right time comes in your life, and you're not open to the love they're giving you because you know how you hurt the and destroyed the previous relationship. You're going to be Rey at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Very, very well said. Final thoughts for me on Rey's journey in Rise of Skywalker is one of the things I really love about reaching out to connect to the Jedi of the past is because that is that moment where she truly does confront her fear, right? Not just the fear of like, I'm connected to Palpatine. She I think she's believing in herself by that. She stands up to him. She says, my parents are strong. She says, I'm not gonna hate, not even you. But then, the Ben's there, and that's great. But then the battle's not going well. Her friends are up there dying. Ben has fallen as once Sidious fell, and petty jerk thrown down the shaft. It would be the easiest thing in the world, confronted by all of her worst fears of everyone around me that I cared about is dying.
Yeah.
It would be the easiest thing in the world for her to give up. And she does she pushes back on exactly what you're describing. She's gone through this journey and she confronts that fear and she reaches out to connect. And I think it gives her not the literal force power strength, but the emotional strength to make her choice to stand up and say, I got this power. I am choosing the light. I am choosing to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
No one is choosing this for me. I am standing up and making my choice. And it's so much easier because there are community. There's people who have my back.
I even clapped. Some people might have heard that in the background, unless my noise gate erased it. I love what you're saying. It honors, and we even talked about it with a great question from Gary McDowell on Tuesday's show, on the news show, about the individual and also the connecting to the greater thing. And you've mentioned a few times here and stuff with Rey at the end. This is why I rebuffed any ideas, even though there might be some fun fan edits and everything. I reject in any way, shape, or form the idea that this film needed the ghosts of Kenobi, Anakin, Quinlan Vos, Kit Fisto to show up and join the fight with her and charge in front of her like the army of the dead in front of Aragorn. Like it was her fight, her generation's fight, but her fight. And what you just said, the community behind you, we're here with you. But you're going to do this yourself because that's what your power will allow you to do. And you're choosing to use the power for the light side. That's why it all works to me. I'm summarizing a little bit, but just that's why as cool as some of those shots might've been, no, Anakin, the ghost of Anakin did not need to be there to pick up the blade to do this fight for her.
Yeah. And maybe there's a different story where that makes sense, but I feel like the whole sequel trilogy has so much been about learning from the past but moving forward yourself. And I really feel like Rise of Skywalker really tried to play fair with that by, putting that idea in the words of Luke Skywalker in the first trailer, right?
Yeah.
We've taught you everything we know, but this is your fight,
Yeah.
is really good. And the final thing for me on Rey's journey is one of the reasons I so deeply love that ending scene that I know is controversial and people have strong opinions. I understand. Not only that she chooses to be a Skywalker, because that's her choice. That's the name she wants. That's the spirit and the ideas that she wants to continue. But I so deeply love that she's burying their blades respectfully and saying, you have taught me everything you know, but these weapons are a symbol of your journey. And now I have my lightsaber, which is made out of my staff, which is a symbol of my lived experiences. It's one of those other moments where it's like, this is also about the individual. This is about Rey owning, this is my life and my experiences, and my lightsaber symbolizes that.
Yeah. And my lightsaber is an honor to my uncle Darth Plagueis, and no, I joke, but well said. And we'll do the ending on some other podcast.
Yes, maybe we can do a scene by scene episode about it and really talk about that mysterious old woman.
Yeah, other than an odd beat or two, which I admit are there and agree wholeheartedly are there. I love everything about it, especially where we go the end of 9 movies, but it's another discussion. We can talk about that for hours.
Yeah. And we'll get moving here because we could talk about this for hours. So let's move on to Kylo. In The Force Awakens, in The Last Jedi, Kylo is, of course, haunted by the past and his legendary family. He fears he will never be as strong as Darth Vader. In an attempt to escape the past, he kills his father, Han Solo, thinking that will make him be more powerful like he desires to be. He kills this dark side parent figure of Snoke, thinking that'll do it. He wants to kill Luke on Crate. At the beginning of Last Jedi, he can't bring himself to personally kill his mother, but on Crate, he does order that no prisoners be taken. So in theory, he is willing to kill Leia, which is terrifying. It's hard to even say those words out loud, but it seems like he is willing to let that happen as long as he doesn't have to personally do it. So he's trying to eliminate any parental figure at all, any symbol of the past, to get past his own fears. It's also well established that he feels a pull to the light because he says it. It's clear that he does not want to be alone. He wants Rey to understand him. He wants Rey to be by his side. That is what he's actively pursuing in that great moment in The Last Jedi, and actively throughout Rise of Skywalker. He is actively pursuing her to be by his side. So that's the big bag of stuff that I think is going on with Kylo. Same question that I had with Rey. Do you think that all of those ideas are do they evolve and resolve in Rise of Skywalker?
Yes. Next topic. Big bag of no. We always joke here in ForceCenter. We know sometimes we have fun and go long and long. I just realized, I was like, oh yeah, we got some things to discuss. I just so loved. I'm drawn to this story, and to Ben and Kylo for a lot of reasons. This was a modern age. This was Disney buys Lucasfilm. We're getting new Star Wars. We got this guy holding a lightsaber in a forest that ignited many debates back in the easy peasy days of Star Wars fandom discourse. And you think you're going to get a new Vader, and guess what? So did this guy. His whole thing is believing he's the new Vader in a way, but it's such a realistic take. And I just go on and on about how much I would not have predicted I would have loved this, but Leia and Han are separated. The love story of my time. They're separated, and their son, I could understand. The Solo twins and Anakin Solo, or whatever the EU stuff is. God bless it. I get it. One of them goes bad. Got it. It was such a real, you talk the mythic of the mundane of the mythic.
Yeah.
We got to put that on a t-shirt too. We got a lot of t-shirts coming out of our discussions this week. To have it of he is not comfortable with who he is or who he thinks supposed to be, and the pressures and the parental figures above him, and the pressures of the previous generation. So he makes mistakes. He makes mistakes by trying to find himself. He crafts this identity. He wears this mask, and then he arrogantly takes it off, and then he just suffers his first defeat. And then everyone else is telling him to take the mask off, so he kills everyone who does it. And he does it. And he becomes a supreme leader, because it's each step forward of I'm not comfortable being Ben Solo for probably good reasons that you should go to some therapy about, and I encourage that. But he doesn't want. I can't be that. And all of this to end up where he has no armor. He is in a shirt with a hole in it and some pants, and he doesn't even show up with really a weapon other than a blaster. He doesn't have a lightsaber. Doesn't have anything. And he's in the end of the day, he is so comfortable being Ben Solo. Finally, that to me is a story resolved.
Yeah. I totally agree. I feel like everything about his emotional canon, his emotional journey tracks that. Of course, presented with Palpatine, he'd be like, I thought I had eliminated most of these parental figures.
Mm-hmm.
The other parental figure that is really still out there for me is my mother. And she is a big part of the pull to the light, because Kylo can find reasons to be mad at his father. His father was inattentive and didn't know how to talk to a kid or how to express his love, like Han struggles with. Luke betrayed him. Luke just feared him. Snoke manipulated him for his own end. So he's got lots of reasons to be mad at all these other parental figures, but he can't quite find his way to be mad at Leia, because she's Leia, right?
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense that in Rise of Skywalker, then this other ultimate parental figure of Palpatine pops up. He's like, yeah, I'm going to kill you for sure. I'll play along with your game, but I'm going to kill you. And in fact, I'm going to get Rey to do it. And I can get both the things I want. I don't want to be alone. I want Rey by my side, and I want you gone. And he spends most of the movie, both trying to connect with Rey, but doing it from this dark side perspective of manipulating her to try to accomplish this, to try to kill Palpatine, and think he's going to have everything he wants. He's going to have all this power, and he won't be alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that the turning point in Rise of Skywalker is that connection with Rey, even in the throes of the dark side, being able to express that honesty of, the reason that I think I finally got you to join me and fall to the dark side, Rey, is you failed my mother. You failed Leia. And that's why there's no point in even thinking about turning back from the dark side, because I failed her and she won't accept me. It's so human and so beautiful. And then the fact that Leia's great big action is to reach out to him and basically say, no, you can still turn around. You can still make a better choice. Right now, right?
Yeah.
It's almost if you almost see, Leia as not. I don't mean this in like a force way, like the pull to the light, but like the idea of Leia, the truth of Leia, the truth of somebody who can take a lot of damage and not buckle in her commitment to the light, is like that truth of who she is has got to be a big part of the pull to the light of Kylo, and then that light embraces him when he thinks it never could again. And then we complete his transformation back to Ben by this true connection with Rey, this kindness of her, even after he has hounded her and manipulated her and seemed willing in this moment to possibly even kill her, that she can still reach out with kindness. And then on top of that, really following up directly from The Last Jedi, right? Luke tells, there's several important things in The Last Jedi to Kylo's turn to Ben in Rise of Skywalker, I think. I think Leia saying to Luke, accept that he's gone, and Luke saying, I can't save him. Not that he can't be saved, but Luke saying, I can't save him, and saying no one's ever really gone. Luke giving the advice to Kylo that if you strike me down in anger, I'll be with you always like your father. And then we get this beautiful moment where we learn in Rise of Skywalker that, the memory of his father is with him always. And the memory of that act of forgiveness and kindness of Han putting his hand on his son's cheek in that loving way, even after the horror, that memory of his father always being with him, exactly as Luke said, is what gives Kylo the final strength to turn away from the dark side. So everything about those three beats of what bring Kylo back to the light are all building on what has come before, I think.
Oh, yeah. With an exclamation point and the cheek touch that saved the galaxy from Han is, I just love that scene. But I love the little additional detail of just when you listen to Adam Driver kind of talk about that scene and the choices made in the scene. And, clearly Adam Driver's not someone who's like, well, on page 72 of this book and, Star Wars, he's probably a Star Wars fan in general, I would think, but you know what I mean? Like, he's there as an actor to make the choices. Just his explanation of that Han scene, of it just being something that's probably played over and over and over and over again in his mind. It goes different ways every time. And now in this particular version, he has the strength to do what he knows he must, which is what he says and claims in 7, right?
Yeah.
As we know, it's just so, and the most powerful, I love you, I know, in Star Wars. No disrespect to the Empire moment at all. But so it all kind of pushes it forward, and the fact that the idea I can't go back, and Leia's not worried about whether you can go back or not. She's worried about right here in the moment. She was always there for him.
Yeah, can you go forward? And with Kylo being obsessed with the past, and that he's never going to be able to become what he's meant to be, as he says to Rey in Last Jedi. Because he's haunted by these other figures who tell him what to be, or that he can't live up to, or want to control him or define him, and all these things that he's wrestling with. It's also really important that he's able to make the better choice for himself as an individual to turn back to the light when he looks at the past and takes what is good from it and what he can draw strength from it. And that's what propels him forward, is finally kind of, instead of just trying to kill the past, turning and facing the past. Like, almost literally, he turns and faces the memory of the last conversation he had with his father. And instead of killing it, running away from it, he turns and he faces it. He confronts fear and becomes back on the path of the destiny of being a Jedi.
And you would yell, "Kill the past," over and over again if every night, the father that you murdered is in your dreams.
Yeah. Yep. Only way to get a good night's sleep, to be flippant about it. And then there's so much great stuff with he gets what he wants. He has this connection with Rey when he has fixed his problem. We're going long here, so we'll wrap up quickly with a look at Finn and Poe. We did a good episode a while back looking specifically at their arc, so we'll touch on this briefly. In The Last Jedi, Finn only wants to keep Rey safe, but through his adventures with Rose, realizes that the fight between the First Order and the Resistance actually matters. There's a difference, and he ends The Last Jedi committed to his friends and the cause. Do you think that main thread of Finn's plays out well for you in Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, I really do. And we did also more specific stuff on Finn with Star Wars Ranked and what we think important things about him. And Finn is tremendously important for me, never to be undercut. And I know there's bigger discussions around and some wonderful, wonderful what ifs and they could have, including a more literal stormtrooper uprising. I'm totally there for all that kind of stuff. But I go to episode 7 and, just him wanting to escape because of fear, him wanting to escape for other reasons than being heroic, and how he really grows to be this wonderful hero based on a feeling. Because he didn't shoot the villager not because he was afraid of Phasma discipline. I mean, he didn't shoot the villager in the Tonal village because of a feeling he had. Right, that's very clear. Mm-hmm. And so for him to ride that all the way through and to just get connected along the way, where he ends up in Last Jedi. Is always been very powerful to me. I love the stuff with DJ. That's where I think I left off Last Jedi yesterday on my workout. right when DJ's like, "Live free, don't join," and to see Boyega's reaction, how he plays that, and Finn just kind of like, he knows that butts up against a feeling he's having, but man, that does seem pretty right in the moment. Especially with the facts, same on both sides, all those kind of things that are playing out. And so to see where he goes and to go the big theme you've always championed in Finn of just the connection and wanting to keep everyone connected, which is so powerful to the sequel trilogy. That phrase has come up a lot, of connection and be connected. So yeah. And at the end, his feeling, his going, it's a feeling, and I know it now.
Yeah.
And having Jana and others go, wow, yeah, that validates my feelings too. Because we didn't know why. We didn't necessarily know. We just did this and we're here and we're trying to find purpose. To validate everyone else's feelings, it's an emotional uprising for me. Whether or not you wanted the actual literal stormtrooper uprising. We got an emotional version. I don't think that's a cheat. I just think it's another way and another path they took. I think it's there, and I think it was played wonderfully by John Boyega, and it does resonate for me.
Yeah, absolutely. An actual uprising, that would be a great different story. But I do want to engage with the story that we got, and I really agree with you about it, the spiritual version of that. Yeah, I love the idea that what Finn is, one of his great strengths is being empathetic, of being a connector, and we see that in The Force Awakens, right? Of like, he just pops into Poe and Rey's life, both separately, and makes these amazing, strong connections with both of them. He's just like a guy who does connect with people. Then he really connects with Rose, romantic or not. There's a clear, strong emotional connection. And then by Rise of Skywalker, when he's committed to the cause, he's the most committed. And there's lots of visuals. I've said this before, where he's the one who literally physically brings them together, asks them to hold hands, and get a little good joke from Grumpy Poe about that. But even at the end, when the big three embrace, after the Battle of Exegol, Finn is in the middle, holding them all together, and I think that's a great picture of a character who that's his natural instinct, to bring people together, to be open to his instincts and not fear. And I think it's told as a whole arc really, really well, of going from Maz's castle, where Maz calls him the guy who's always going to run, and he's like, "Yep. Bye. I'm leaving." He tries to run away from the fight.
What are you doing?
Right. And then he's like, okay, but not Rey. I won't run away from Rey, but that's it. Everything else I'll run away from. And then by the end of Last Jedi, it's like, no, this matters. We all matter. Let's stay together. And he goes from the guy who is determined to run away because the First Order can't be defeated, to the guy, at that great moment when he's on the Star Destroyer with Jana, the guy who's not going to turn around for anything, because he feels it's in his power in the moment to make a big difference, and to make sure that they can't hurt the galaxy anymore. They can't take other kids like him or Jana. He goes from the guy who wants to run away to the guy who's not going to leave until the evil is stopped. Yeah.
You've hit on going from Maz's castle. I think that's a great point to go from there to what you're seeing at the end of Rise of Skywalker. I'll even play around a little bit with earlier of him escaping, and because it's the right thing to do, and Poe's just that whole like, you need a pilot, I need a pilot, you're right. And that's the only reason I'm doing this. It's fear, even though he has some instincts and stuff at play. Again, clear, he doesn't shoot the villagers, and he sees the death in front of him, the blood on the helmet, all those things that are seem so long ago, Force Awakens 6 years ago now. all that's there to take that character. Yeah, I'm not doing something heroic. I'm just trying to get out of here because I got to run to what you just said, to where he is at the end. I love one of those moments. Jam their speeders. I can't. They're not speeders. Boom! Hits down. Orbx are coming out. BB-8's going. Finn and Jan are there. I get emotion thinking about it now. Think that kid from the beginning, I'm doing it because I just need a pilot and I want to get the hell out of here. To think that guy, like you just said, I'm running, I ain't turning around. That's a full arc for me.
Yeah, and whose idea was that to go get Janna and all of the other First Order troops who had a feeling and walked away and get the Orbx? That was Finn, because they landed on not a random planet. They're trying to go there, but they landed on a planet and he connected. He's Mr. Empathy and Mr. Connection, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and as I'm getting passionate, I'm holding a Han Solo minifig, and I just dropped it. Han, you're with me. Stay with me, Han. Stay connected.
It'll be okay. All right. Last character arc that we want to discuss here is Poe, of course. In The Last Jedi, Poe learns the importance of balancing risk and caution. At first, he's really not. He's thinking, you always run ahead. You always blow up the thing. It's a fight. You got to go out there and fight. And then he learns the importance through Holdo and Leia about leadership and learning when to fight, to live to fight another day versus when to do a crazy, risky, daring thing, because it truly does matter in that moment. And in particular, he really learns this importance about being a symbol of hope. He himself understands at the end of Last Jedi and says, no, I get it now. Our whole mission right now is just for the Resistance to survive. Right. And he repeats the line that he had been told. We need to be the spark that will light the fire that will burn the First Order down. That's his kind of last big mission statement for where he's headed next in Last Jedi. Do you think those ideas are resolved well in The Rise of Skywalker?
Nah, this one completely fails, and the movie can end. No. Man, I actually was getting, emotionally shook. Finn, I love you, and I really hope John Boyega years from now can just completely, fully 110% appreciate his contributions to this wonderful saga. Different podcast, I guess. No, the thing about Poe that resonates with me, this is very personal. Anyway, and I'm going to talk about it in terms of a big promotion. You could be a parent. You could be someone who gets what you want. Joseph, you and I have other creative pursuits in this town. So let's say the Joseph Scrimshaw Comedy Hour gets that big green light. And it's something you've always felt you always wanted and you grew into, but then you actually get it and you're sitting there going, oh God, how do I do this? I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but how do I do this? That's Rise of Skywalker and Poe for me. I understand the importance of leadership. I want this role. I'm going to seek this role out, or not seek it out in terms of, greed and power, but just like I'm accepting what's given to me. I'm accepting my role in this, and we're going to lead. And we just survived because I learned this valuable lesson. Cool. Fade in on Rise of Skywalker. It's not going great. I can't keep things going. My space wizard friend isn't going on the fight. My droid, she hurt my droid. Nothing's working. We're on the run even more. No one will listen to us. And I don't even think any of it's worth it. And I don't really know how to do it. And I just feel so alone here. And my past, should I just go to that thing where I ran away and who we are? That other big theme of Rise of Skywalker is we can be dominated by who we were in the past, and we carry that over. Even I love the best example that you pointed out. I love is Lando going, my days are done. I'm old. I'm out of the fight, and that ain't true. And for all that, for Poe, and to stick with it, and he is the glue, and he learns how to lead him. He learns how to be the inspiration. Lando goes and gets the help, and Lando's there, and so that's why all that to say is I'll stop my ramble. I love him at the foot of Leia's body. I love him not knowing how to do it, because getting the promotion and knowing how to do it when you feel alone because the buck stops with you, that's so real. That's so mundane. And now I got the mythic version of that.
It really is. I think that's incredibly well said. I love Poe's energy because he was like the go get him guy in Force Awakens. Yeah, we can do this. We're going to do this. And then in Last Jedi, it's like, why aren't we doing things?
Yeah.
And then like, oh, I get it. You need to do things in a certain way to hold everybody together, to be an inspiration, to have leadership, to keep everybody together and moving in the same direction. Got it. oh no, do I got it? And all of Rise of Skywalker, or the beginnings of it, is just, yeah, the ship's barely fallen, barely keeping together. Greatest asset, Rey, is not leaving the planet for some reason. She's training for something. I'm trying to keep that tiny little spark of hope alive. And also, somehow Palpatine returned. Now things are even worse.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to not let my hope die, I think, is what's going on with Poe. He expresses it to Zori, right? Of like, I don't know. I'm committed to this fight. I'm going to see it all the way through, but I don't know if I have hope. And he gets that inspiration from Zori of like, there are more of us, remember? And they want you to feel alone. He gets scolded from Finn when Finn's kind of like, you are failing. You're not being as good as Leia because you're letting that spark go out. And then when he knows he needs to take the mantle, he gets that great advice from Lando of, the way we did it was together, and yet another moment, yet another theme of, yes, be the best individual you can be, but man, two individuals together is pretty great too. Yeah. And what I love most about Finn and what I feel, or not Finn, but Poe's journey is I feel like it's one of the most direct connections to The Last Jedi of the lesson that he learns is the Resistance doesn't exist to defeat the First Order by themselves. They need to exist to be the spark that will light the fire, that will burn the First Order down. They need to be the hope that will inspire other people that it's worth it to fight, that you can make a difference, that everyone can come together and choose as a whole, just like we can choose as individuals who we want to be. As a whole, we can choose what we want the world, what we want the galaxy to be. And that Citizens Fleet showing up at the end of Rise of Skywalker, right when Poe is just about out of hope and has nothing left but to apologize, all that time holding that spark is absolutely paid off. The Citizens Fleet shows up, and that spark that he's been talking about since Last Jedi finally becomes a fire. It's so direct in such a beautiful connection between the two films, I think.
It's inspirational. It's breathtaking to me in a way that I was not expecting going into 9. I've talked about it here before. It's not a Navy, sir. It's people. Gets me crying sometimes. I'm a little moved now. And there's more of us, Poe. There's more of us. It's Star Wars. It's what everything.
It is.
It's Luke staring at the twin suns. I want to go be a great warrior, and he must learn that wars not make one great. And it's people. It's connection, and it's Infant's Nest throwing down her helmet and saying, I need a drink because we're all suffering and we're all going to fight. And exactly what you're saying, Poe holding the line, which is, by the way, a very Leia thing because he's directly learning from Leia. He's at the foot of Leia as she's passing away to the next chapter of life. And Leia held the line, and Poe's going to hold the line despite whether or not he believes in it at the moment. And we all have those doubts. And that's why I just love that reveal. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we did this. I'm so sorry. I always say Star Wars often it reminds you that you are already on the journey that you're supposed to be on. Poe is already on the journey. And that moment of there's more of us, Poe, and John Williams going, I finally get to use my theme in the story, never ceases to inspire me. And by the way, I think there's some wonderfully corny things in that sequence, including who's that flyer? Babu Frick's there. Yeah.
Hey.
Little fan service, little makes me laugh. Yeah, great. I don't want dark. Who's that flyer? Zori died. Babu died. Sorry. Come on. Wedge shows up. Let's fly,
Lando. Yeah.
God, it's 9 movies to that moment for me. And Poe is holding the line, man. Good job, Poe.
Just beautifully summarized. It not only connects the Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens, but it connects to all these other moments in the entire Star Wars story, the entire tapestry of storytelling. And I think for me, last thing I have to say about, we're really looking at this connection between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And I think Last Jedi goes to some dark and brooding places, and it challenges and it pushes and people question, and they come out of it with belief, and then they try to hold on to that belief. And as long as possible in Rise of Skywalker, they think they're on the right path, but they're stumbling forward trying to make it happen. And I think what works about these two films for me is Last Jedi goes to this dark place to question a lot of things. And there's something about Rise of Skywalker that is just this loud, bright, triumphant declaration of the light side. It is the fun of Star Wars with that adventure serial pacing. It is the wonder of it with, strange monsters and light speed skipping and all of that, and two lightsabers against a ton of lightning, and it's all this weird, great fantasy. But it's also just about, don't be ashamed of unabashedly embracing the light. Listen to your heart. Be the person that you want to be. Who are you in heart? Who are you in spirit? And do you think it's corny that we're stronger together? We don't care. It's true. Family is good. Purpose is good. Helping one another is good. Being that person who's there to pick up their friend after they fell down for a second, that's good, and we're not going to be ashamed of any of that. And Rise of Skywalker does border on the corny because it is just like, no darkness, no snark. Here's the light.
Yeah. Remember, there were younger generations might not remember. There was a time where Luke Skywalker was kind of the goody two shoes. We don't like Luke. All he does is represent the good fight.
That's boring.
It's boring. It's boring. It's corny. Rise of Skywalker took everything that Last Jedi presented and went into the heart of darkness to shine a light.
Yeah. All right. So we went a little bit over my projected time, but I think we talked about a lot of great things. And obviously, this is really great to just really show you truly that we totally understand, like we said at the top of the podcast, art is subjective, and everyone has a right as a Star Wars fan to love different parts of Star Wars. And if these movies don't work for you, and if you listen to this whole podcast and you're still like, I don't feel the connection, that's totally fine. But I think this podcast has been a great demonstration that Ken, our passion is real, right? We're truly deeply moved by these films.
I am in my room alone, no AC's on. I'm sweating. I look like I'm from Streetcar Named Desire in a tank top, and I'm crying. And I say often, being quite frankly on Jedi Council in 2017, where we often, and you were in that too, Joseph, just like sometimes the focal point of being too rosy about Star Wars. We used to get that all the time. I used to get that directly at me all the time. I go home after those, and I still put on Solo, and I still put on Rogue One, and I still watch Clone Wars, and I still watch Rise of Skywalker. I watched Last Jedi. I watched Last Jedi on a treadmill 2 days ago. I've seen this movie 39 times. I've lost count. When Tally Lintra, God bless you, Tally, when Poe says, Tally, get on in there, and her A-wing pops up, I'm like, yes, we got it. And I know what happens.
Yeah.
I still love this thing. And you know why? Because I was there in the 80s. I'm not saying you needed to be there in the 80s. Don't get me wrong. I was there in the 80s, but I was choked, beaten, and pushed down because I had a Return of the Jedi shirt on. And man, what a wonderful time to be a Star Wars fan. And what a wonderful, we're blessed to even have films to debate.
Exactly. And I think I know I said this is my final thought. This is my real final thought. It can be hard to embrace joy and sincerity. And when I was a kid, I felt such passion for these stories, and I felt such inspiration. And the moment where Luke flips in Return of the Jedi and he catches that green blade and he can save his friends, and a hero has come, and he has that emotional clarity of I am a Jedi like my father before me. That gave me thrills and chills growing up. And now that I am older and growing up more, I get those same chills and thrills from moments like my hero, Luke Skywalker, saying, I will not be the last Jedi. This fight, this heroism will continue. And I really enjoy letting myself embrace that.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Excellent. All right. Do you want to tell people where they can find us?
Hi, friends. Welcome to ForceCenter. We love talking Star Wars. We're on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We are also on Instagram and YouTube as well. A little less active on there, we know, but we love rebroadcasting episodes on YouTube. And we always might just throw something up there with our faces on it. You never know. Our Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We're available on a lot of different podcast platforms, including Anchor, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn. Check us out on Amazon Music and Spotify as well. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter and patreon.com/ForceCenter is where you can support us directly. My name is Ken Napzok, and you can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com, or check out all the fun things I do over at the GPA, the Good People Association. We're not the good people. You are. Check us out at the GPA.fun. And Joseph.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for all of my other comedy adventures. Thank you so much for everyone who listened to this extra supersized episode of Force Center. For now, for myself, for Ken, for the spirit of connection and individuals, this has been Force Center.